My next guest is Troy Redfern, British slide guitarist and singer-songwriter. Troy Redfern has been dubbed by the British press as the king of the slide guitar. We spoke about Troy's new album, The Fire Cosmic, that comes out August 6th, his new singles Waiting for Your Love and Ghosts. The new album follows 5 albums that Troy released in 2020. The new album was recorded at the legendary Rockfield Studios in North Wales, the same studio where Queen recorded all of their early albums. For the recording of the new album, Troy enlisted one of the best rhythm sections in the UK, including the legendary Darby Todd on drums, bass guitar player Dave Marks, and Ron Bumblefoot Thal from Guns N' Roses in Asia. Troy describes this as the ultimate dream team. Troy also played a series of different guitars on the new album, including a 1929 National Resonator.
That all sticks, you know. I'm just sort of praying that that everything opens up and it doesn't get locked down again.
Yeah.
You just don't know, do you? How is it over there? Because you guys were...
Yeah, we got battered in India. We had a terrible second wave of COVID. That was quite bad, but things are opening up now.
Right, yeah.
People are slowly going back to work.
Yeah.
Travel has still not opened up. I think that's a time away.
Right, yeah.
And live music, of course. I mean, we had a fabulous music scene until COVID hit. People were actually making money. Festivals were doing well. Festivals were making money and all of that.
Right, yeah. So whereabouts in India are you? Where are you based?
I'm in the southern part of India.
Right. Yeah, because there's an interesting drum culture down there, isn't there? Is it called conical?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of John McLaughlin, and he's done lots of work. And I've it's something I'd like to study, but it's quite in depth, and you've got to really want to do that to
Yeah.
But I love that. I love the drumming. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the big drum culture. There's another Indian band you should check out that use the kunakol also. They're called Bloody Wood.
Right.
I don't know if you have seen them, but they started out as a cover band doing covers of Indian film songs, but doing like metal versions of Indian film songs. And then built a huge community on social media. Played at Wacken Open Air, I think. Was it last year, 2019? I think they played Wacken.
Right.
They were due to play. Yeah, they were due to play at Bloodstock, 2020.
Right. So it's quite complex time signatures and sort of interesting rhythmically.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah. Check them out. I'm sure you'll find it interesting. It's an interesting sound.
Yeah. So when they come over and tour over there, do you hook up, or you sort of involved with that kind of aspect, or?
Yes, I am. So when Steve Vai came here, for example, I worked for Steve. He did a couple of shows here. I worked for him, but then I did. I shoot a lot in the UK as well and in Europe. So I shoot most of the big festivals. And I've done some work for Dream Theater. I've done work for Supersonic Blues Machine. Did a couple of shows in the UK with them, with Behemoth. A whole bunch of these guys. So yeah, when they come to India, I end up working for them. And then when I'm there, which is every summer, I end up doing work for them as well.
Yeah. Steve Vai's amazing. Since I was a kid, I've been a huge Steve Vai fan.
Yeah.
Especially, I love the morning thunder sort of thing, and that kind of just after he left Frank Zappa's band and Flexible and that kind of era, I absolutely love it. And Passion Warfare, obviously, because that's just a stunning piece of work.
Yeah, it was amazing watching him. I had seen them in Singapore. I saw the G3, the Generation Axe thing.
Yeah.
With Zach Wilde, Tosin, Abasi, Malmsteen, and Vai. And then when he came to India, I was lucky to work for him. And I think there must have been 50,000 people at that show in just outside of Mumbai when he played. It was incredible.
I bet, yeah. He's an amazing sort of. What I like about him and Joe Satriani, some of those guys, they've just got an amazing voice on the instrument. They just got such a unique voice, and as a musician, that's the goal, isn't it? To have an identifiable character that you have in your instrument, and
Absolutely.
he's got that by the bucket load,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's every artist's goal, right? Is
Yeah,
to how to differentiate yourself and how to find your voice.
yeah, yeah,
If it's a musician, maybe you start out by playing covers, but then how do you kind of find your voice and find your style where people
yeah,
can listen to something and say, this is Troy, or this is Steve, or this is,
yeah,
Joe.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
um,
No,
uh,
it's
w- which is why, for me, listening to your music and, I've been listening to the album, I've been listening to all your albums the last
right,
few
right.
days, thoroughly enjoying it. I want to
Thank
I
you.
want to ask you about the new album. I was reading an interview where you said this was your best ever album. Why is it that you feel that way? Are you more enthusiastic about this body of work, The Fire Cosmic, than the other stuff you put out?
Um, I think it's my best album in terms of production.
Okay.
If some of my older albums would have been produced to that quality, to that level, then I probably wouldn't have said that. I think this one's more concise. The songs are sort of tighter and leaner. I put an album out last year called Thunder Moon, which was instrumental, and I love that. It's an instrumental album, but the production value is low. Certainly lower than this. But I like the way that that's kind of non-genre specific, and it kind of it references a lot of my influences, like Zappa and obviously early Barre and things like that. But yeah, the new one's it's the first time I've hired a producer, and I've hired in sort of like top musicians and recorded at a good studio. So it's all those factors have kind of built an album that I'm proud of as a whole, as song wise and production wise, and especially with the production.
But musically, what makes this stand out for you, purely, sonically?
Sonically, and I think just the songwriting's tighter. I think I tried to work hard just to strip everything down to very short, concise songs on this. And I was happy with that, and especially getting Darby Todd, the drummer, who was playing with Devin Townsend at Bloodstock. He's a great drummer.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of the same influences. He likes a lot of 70s fusion, like Billy Cobham and early like David Lee Roth albums. So we got lots of there's just tons of stuff. Vinnie Colaiuta and all those guys. We've got a lot of similarities in what we grew up listening to. So it was great having him involved, because he's one of these guys who just gets the project. He gets what you're trying to do and just makes it better than you could ever do. So
you spoke about the production. What is the role that a producer plays in kind of bringing it all together? It's not just a technical thing, right? Did the producer give you a direction as well, or were you like, I have a clear direction for the sound and I know exactly what I want? How does that work?
Well, with this project, I demoed the songs completely. They were recorded fully with guitars, drums, and everything. Just everything was done. So I presented those to him. This guy called Paul Winstanley, who I'd worked with before in another band I was recording with, and I like the guy. He seemed to just be very quick, very sharp, and just great in the studio. He got me a great guitar sound. Anyhow, I sent him the demos, and he got the musical references immediately. I went and spoke about it, sent the demos, had a conversation. He was saying, "Oh, right, I can hear this, and you reference, he just understood the music." And so when we went to the studio, we kind of knew what we were aiming for to get the tracks down, so there was some direction on a few small arrangement things. We could do this, we could do that. We spoke as a band and with Paul, maybe we should try this, try that. So it wasn't he didn't produce it in a way that he was kind of like doing too much directing, because we knew what we were trying to achieve, before we went into the studio. But when it came to the mix, he mixed it. I had nothing to do with that. I gave him everything he needed, and I just stepped away from it and just left him to it. And he sent me pretty much the finished product. So that it took me about 3 listens to get my head around what he'd done. His stylistic sort of direction. And I loved it, but if I was doing it myself, I would have maybe gone slightly more rockabilly, or kind of like, but maybe more of an open sound. But he span it in a kind of like a modern. It's got a very modern production, but even though it's kind of like still blues rock, it's quite a modern sort of style of blues rock, or some of it, So I couldn't be happy with what he did to it. So so yeah, he sculpted it really. We gave him everything, and he kind of gave us the final product.
Yeah, because it's interesting, right? The sound also has a certain grittiness and a certain nakedness to it, which I really liked.
Yeah, well, he said he wanted to make it sound like a band. He could have produced it different ways. He didn't want it to sound like a guitar, and I didn't either. He didn't want it to sound like a guitarist's album. He wanted it to sound like a band. Yeah, and I think he did that. He achieved that. He made it sound. So the guitars aren't super forward. The guitar solos aren't super forward. They're kind of in the mix.
Yeah.
And I like that. I think he's done because I've got such great players, I don't want to push those guys to the back. You hire these guys in who are just great. The drums are really forward. The toms are huge, like on Roger Taylor's Queen album, on the Queen work. again, Darby's a huge Roger Taylor fan, so we both wanted that kind of like huge drum kit sound. Yeah, he did it. He did a great job.
Yeah, does the album kind of play itself in a sense when you have musicians of this quality that you're working and recording with? That makes
Yeah,
it easier, right?
100%. I sent those guys the demos. We had no rehearsals, and they just turned up in the studio, and I didn't know what was going to happen because I knew they were good, but I didn't know that they were going to nail it. And it was like 2 takes for the drums. It was just like, I think the most we did was 3 takes. We talk about it, we do a run through, talk about it. And Darby played every take like he was doing a gig. I've got video of him playing, and he's just giving it everything for the whole time he was there. It was incredible to watch someone with that much energy who could maintain that energy. And being that it was Rockfield Studios,
Yeah.
he'd not been there before, I'd not been there, so everyone was kind of hyped to go to this iconic studio, and that really kind of fed the energy, I think, because everyone wanted to do the best they could do.
Yeah. How did you pick Rockfield? I mean, it's in a sense a no-brainer, but how did you pick? It's quite far out, isn't it?
Well, it's only about an hour from here, so it's it's fairly close. But that wasn't really the reason. It was because when I was a kid growing up, A Night at the Opera and Sheer Heart Attack, when I was kind of like 7, 8, kind of very young, those albums meant everything to me, and I knew the drum rooms were particularly good. They're very, very good drum sound at Rockfield. So that's what drew me. It was one of those, places that I dreamt of playing. I thought, if I'm going to do this properly, go down there. And it worked.
Yeah, I think I was reading an interview once where Ozzy Osbourne, I think, called it the birthplace of heavy metal.
Right, yeah. Well, the thing is, that's the thing. You take all that kind of with you when you go down there. So
yeah,
you take all those stories, and that definitely sort of feeds into the excitement of the place. And they got so much great vintage gear. All their mic collection is ridiculous. It's so good, and the desks, just everything there is great. It's kind of old and vintage, and
I read that they started out as a residency. I think they were one of the first studios in the world that had a residency back in the 70s, where you could actually go and stay on the farm and then go and record.
That's it. Yeah, they were. Yeah. And,
so did you take lots of pictures at the studio? Because I was reading where I think I can't remember who it was, but he walked in and he saw, I think it was Freddie Mercury playing he was writing, I think, Bohemian Rhapsody or something, sitting in that studio. So
yeah, well, that piano's still there, and there was nothing on the album that had a piano. I'd not written anything for piano, and I said, I've got to have that on the album. And Dave Marks, the bass player, is a good pianist, and I said, for the outro track, I wonder if we could have a fade out and have that piano, and he worked something out, worked out a piano line that kind of like worked with chord progression, and so that's the last thing you hear on the album is the Bohemian Rhapsody piano. I had to have that in there.
Because it's amazing, right? You don't get fade outs on albums. I haven't listened to a fade out on a song in ages, and this is the first time.
No. It's just one of those. It's one of those things like that. It's quite a sort of sprawling, sort of like large song, and I just thought, piano is the way to finish.
Brilliant. And the album was mastered at Abbey Road.
Yeah. Once I'd had the final mixes, and I'd invested so much time and energy and money into the album, I thought, right, where can I get this mastered? And it sounded so good. And I just thought, the only place I could that's deserving, is kind of Abbey Road, because it's so iconic. So I went through the list of people who worked there and looked at what they'd worked on. And Frank Arkwright seemed to be the one because, he'd worked on System of a Down, Biffy Clyro, just lots of bands, but also things like ABBA and, sort of like pop music. So I thought he's got a great kind of spread. And he, it was fantastic what he did to it. It's very subtle, but it's, tightening up the bottom end and giving it a shine. And it was definitely worth it. It was definitely worth going there.
Is there a backstory with the name of the album itself?
Yes. I'd commissioned a guy from Brazil to do the artwork, and I found him on Instagram, and he had kind of like a comic sort of like style, where you could see the print dots in the paper and all that kind of thing. And I've been a huge fan of that style since I was a kid. the first job I wanted to do when I was a kid was be a comic artist. And then I realized that those guys are so fast and are so good, unless you can churn that stuff out quick, I could do it, but I could do it very slowly. And but I've always messed around with it, and I've always been a collector of sort of comics and things like that. And I started working on something not long after I commissioned the guy, and it was, I thought, right, 60s cosmic background, and I put myself in the situation with the resonator. Kind of drew this up, and I kind of liked it. I thought I was proud that I finished something, because normally I sort of do them in black and white and just leave them, and I'd finish this thing. And I put it online just as almost like a test, and I wasn't sure about putting it on social media, but I put it up there.
Mm-hmm.
And the response was ridiculously good. It's like people like Zappa's slide guitar player Denny Wally was commenting, and all these guys I never speak to, and I thought, that's interesting. That's interesting that people seem to like that. And I did another one for Bumblefoot, because he's on the album. So I did one of him and sent it over, and I didn't realize he's a big comic fan. He put it up on his social media, and Satriani and Richie Coates and were liking it. And I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna do this myself. I'm gonna. In fact, I've just received the vinyl.
Oh, you have? Wow.
Yesterday. I did. So it's
oh wow.
So it's nice seeing it big, and I did it as a gatefold.
It's beautiful.
And the Bumblefoot one is somewhere, I think, down here. But it's nice seeing it big, because the CDs have arrived already, but the vinyl kind of like does the artwork. It's nice and long. And so I decided to cancel the guy from Brazil and just go with it myself. But the title. Originally, when I did the first artwork, I had no intention of using it as the artwork, but I had like a comic strip panel at the top that I can't actually remember the wording, but it was sort of like, it was a bit like the Silver Surfer, like an origin story kind of thing, like I can't remember something about the 6-string highways and the quantum realms and stuff, searching for the fire cosmic. So it was like and that was the little tagline. And I think it was the producer Win that said, you should use that. You should go with that. And I was like, not sure, because it was to me, it was just making sure it tied into the whole album. I think it was going to be called Sanctify before that. And I thought, oh, yeah, let's go with that. And and now it feels right. It takes a while for these things to kind of feel like it should be, but I'm glad I went with that.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? When you when I looked at the album title and then you look at the artwork, it just works.
Yeah. Well, it's it's a lot of it's by chance, really.
So it's interesting how. Yeah, but tell me, choice of you had Bumblefoot on the album. Why Bumblefoot?
Because in the back end of 2019, sort of like a few months before the pandemic, I went over to Poland to play a festival, and that's where I met Darby, and also Bumblefoot was playing there, and he was doing a solo show, and I was sitting next to him at the press conference and whatnot, and I just hit it off with the guy. He's just such a lovely, genuine person, and we just had hung out, and I ended up playing his guitar that night. There was this he asked me if I was coming to the jam. Anthony Gomez was playing, headlining, and
fabulous.
I said to Bumblefoot, I've not been invited to the jam, so probably not. So he said, no, come on. And sort of things happened that he ended up sending me out with his double neck guitar.
Oh, you did? Wow. Okay.
And it was strange because I wanted to. It was a great audience. It was a theatre that was full. People were surging. It was packed. It was a headline. Just at the encore of the headline. And so he gave me this guitar, and I've always wanted to play a fretless. I've never played one, but I thought because you've got to switch. You can either switch it up for this neck, so the pickup works here, or you could switch it for the. So I played the fretted, and then I switched it down and played the fretless for a while in the solo, and it was great. It's just vibrato is kind of odd because on a fretted instrument you push up. And on the fretless, you kind of like you play it like a cello, So that was kind of like, but I have to do that really quickly in front of an audience without making it look like I'm trying to work out how this thing works. So that was great fun. So I got back from that gig, and I just messaged him and said, are you up for putting a solo on one of the tracks or playing some guitar? And he said, yeah, no problem. Just send me the track over. And once we recorded at Rockfield, sent him the track, and within a day or two, I got the track back with an amazing guitar solo. What I like about Bumblefoot, a bit like Vine, all those guys, they're inventive players. They're not just shredders. They do things that, like Matthias Eklund, they do things that are unusual that you haven't heard before, and it's kind of, and that's what's great, because they've got so much technique, but they've got the imagination as well as the technique, and that's what I love about those guys.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to ask you about, your choice of guitars on this album and the whole thing with the resonator, right? How did all that come about?
I've had resonators probably for 16, 17 years, my first one, and then gradually, sort of like over the years, I've sort of like collected more, and they're quite hard to play. They're not like, when you have a nice, I don't know, like a really nice Les Paul, they're so easy to play. They're just they're effortless. But with the resonators, that you really do have to fight. I know there's always talk about fighting guitars, but resonators really, really are quite sort of beasts to play. And but this one over here, I just grab it. It's right by me. This 19, this old 29.
The National, right? This is the one.
Yeah. This one, especially with this tuning, is just it's kind of just so automatic, the way it can generate ideas. Or this is the way I feel, that pretty much all the songs are written on this. They were, if I strip them back, they were just kind of written on the resonator and vocal. And what I like to do, especially with the resonators, I like to put them into tunings that I don't know the scales anymore. I don't know the shapes purposely. So then I have to kind of create chords by ear or just by moving to find new voicings that I wouldn't hit on, because if I'm in standard tuning, I know modes and I know my scales, and all that, and you end up going to the same places. But putting one of those into an odd tuning, I just find it, the ideas are a little bit more, they can be more unique. They can be sort of something different that you wouldn't hit on, that I wouldn't actually go to. And I just, and for playing slide on them, they're great. You've got some nice string tension, and they're very solid instruments, even though they're very old. They're still very robust.
So is it fair to say then that it's almost like playing another instrument? It's not really like a guitar. It could be a mandolin. It could be any one of those things. Is that fair?
100%. Yeah, I kind of play those when I play, in standard tuning, and when I wrote stuff like Thunder Moon, it's almost like I have a different operating system in my head. So when I've got that guitar, this kind of hemisphere of the brain works, or we don't, I can't really explain it, but when I approach these guitars, I approach them completely differently. I approach them almost like a beginner. So you're feeling your way around. You're searching for notes. You're searching for sounds.
Yeah.
So it's a very different process to picking up a standard guitar, because there's not as much searching. I've been so familiar with that fretboard for so many years that you kind of go to the places that and you try new things out, but these open tunings really do make you search.
Yeah, but tell me, Troy, do you read or write conventional music?
No, I'm not a sight reader. Like I said, I've learnt intervals and understanding intervals, and like scales and modes, so I know how to build sound. So if someone said, play something sounding Eastern, I would know what that means in intervals, or if someone want, obviously the standard ones like Lydian and mixed Lydian, I kind of understand how those are built, and I understand that those fit with chords. So I know that part of it, but I'm definitely not a sight reader, because I've never had the need for that, so I think it's one of those skill sets that if you've got a need for something or need to learn something, but I would never use it, so.
Yeah, because I've spoken to people who have said that knowing too much music theory can kind of inhibit their ability to write songs. And, they believe, a lot of them seem to believe that they have an interesting sound, or they come up with interesting compositions without without any formal training or a formal understanding of structure and composition.
I think that's right. well, look at all the sort of like, we're talking about blues a minute ago, look at all those guys, who had such unique voices and knew nothing about music in this, and just the way that their music could, you feel like it's something coming directly from the soul, and that's, there are two aspects. Like I said, I'm a big Zappa fan, so I do like complex music. I do like that. But on the other hand, I also like Fred McDowell or some of those guys. Those guys who lived out in the country and were just playing, for small parties of people. Sort of just house parties, really. And it just seems very real, and it's not about sort of selling records or marketing or anything like that. It was just about sort of expression. But I like, like I said, and again, I like all sorts of music. I love jazz. I was listening to a Love Supreme this morning, Coltrane. I just love all aspects, of music, because I think you can get something from everything. You can get even pop music. You can get something about production, or and I just think it's important to saturate yourself with lots of sounds.
Yeah, which is why I think it's a great time to be a music listener in this era of streaming, right? You can get music from all corners of the world. What's it like being a musician? What is your take on the whole royalties from streaming and all of that?
Well, I noticed something on social media this morning just before we spoken, and in the UK, MPs are sort of trying to get a fairer percentage for streaming. Have you seen that this morning? Have you seen that come up?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
It's interesting sort of development. So hopefully that will change things. And if that happens worldwide, because I think I saw Kate Bush, Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney, all these big sort of names are really trying to push for that. And that's what you need, because at the minute, 0.00059 pence is just a joke. It's just. But I'm lucky. In my world, I'm still selling physical product. When I go out and play gigs, I'm selling CDs, and vinyl. So there's still money to be made from that. But it's unfortunate with Spotify. It does sort of grind my gears. When I see at the end of the year everyone putting up their social media stats, their Spotify stats, and you're thinking it's kind of like you're showing that you're not. Even if you got sort of 20,000, or whatever, it's just you're not making anything from that, and it's great. It's great to show people are interested in your music, but it would be just nice if Spotify and YouTube and all those guys kind of just made it a bit fairer, really.
Absolutely. But you put some of your albums up on Bandcamp, right? Was it Bandcamp last year?
Yes, because they would once a month they were doing a thing where they waived the fees, so I thought that was a fair sort of thing to do. So that's why I put so many albums out over the year, really. I thought I record lots of music, and I've got my hard drive full of things, and I just thought, right, okay, I'll drop that one in there, drop that one. And
was that also a conscious effort? Because I mean, to stay top of mind with the whole streaming audience, you put out 4 albums, right, last year?
I think it was 5 actually. It was 5 in the end. It was 5 because I'd had a tour came in early 2020, and it was a 6-week tour, and the last album I put out was probably 18 months before, maybe 2 years, so I needed a product, something to take with me on tour to sell it, as merch. So I put this Raging Heart out as a physical CD and took that on tour, and we got stopped halfway through the tour. 3 weeks in, that's when lockdown happened, so we was like, God. And that was a great tour. That was like 6 weeks around the UK. And they were great venues like the Liverpool Philharmonic and places like that. Just a good venues. So everything was looking like it was an upward trajectory. And I thought, what people started doing live streams, and I thought I'm going to record. I'm going to make things in that time. So I made an album called Ireland, which is kind of acoustic. And then after that, I went through my hard drive and I thought, okay, I've got some stuff left over from that album. I could easily make 10 songs up. I put that on Bandcamp, and that instrumental album, and then an improvised album. I wanted to do a thing where I'd play for 30 minutes on the resonator as an improvisation. I went in with no idea the whole point of the exercise was kind of like hit record with a blank canvas, and just to see if I could just play, and it all works, it's not perfect, but that wasn't the point of the project. The project wasn't to make it perfect. I wasn't going to sit there and learn everything and then go and do that. It was just more like an exercise in sort of like because it's not really concentration. It's kind of the opposite of that, really. It's kind of like just freeing yourself and just playing. And so I put that out, and then Thunder Moon at the back end of the year. And that one surprised me because, like I spoke about before, it has elements of Zappa. There's like a thing which is a bit like an Edgar Varese kind of thing with cello and percussion. And I wasn't sure if I should put it out because I'm kind of known, in the blues sort of scene for doing blues and slide playing. But I thought, this is kind of like, should I be putting this out? And I put it out, and that sold better than other stuff, which really shocked me. It was like, well, okay, right, that's really weird. But I think a lot of it, is to do with the way I packaged it. It's got a very arty looking cover, and all of us are the same. You can't help but filter music through the visual image. So if it's presented as art because it's an abstract kind of piece on the front of it, I think that really sort of changes the way you kind of like digest the music. Maybe that's why I figured it.
And this is all out on Red 7 Records, right? That's your own label, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I was signed to a Belgian label with my first album, and the label owner, I signed for 3 albums, and the label owner died. So it kind of just got, it was kind of up in the air, and it never got resolved. So I thought, okay, I'll just release stuff, through my own label.
But do you ever think you'll go back to a label, given given that you've had success with self-publishing in a sense? Do you think you'll ever go back?
It depends on the label. And if it's something like Mascot or one of those labels, like you're saying, Supersonic Blues Machine, certain labels can do something for you and other labels can't. So, if you sign with a label, you're looking at least 50% of the value of your product being taken.
Exactly.
So for that 50%, they have to be doing something, whatever it is, but to help your profile or marketing or whatever. So if it was a sort of small label, I would say no. But someone like Mascot, and that kind of level, they actually do good work. So
Nice. But tell me, Trey, what is your songwriting process? How do you write?
The kind of stuff that I've written for the Fire Cosmic and that, the song orientated stuff, it's always pretty much always, besides the exception, it's guitar. So I would sit with the guitar like I've been doing this morning. I've just had my phone as a notebook, and I would start playing chord ideas and then just singing melodies on top of that. I'd record that first fragment if I liked it, and then I develop, so I wouldn't forget that, and then I'd try and develop that vocal melody until it was like a structure, and then I would work the lyrics into that. So I would be naturally singing phonetically. I'd be singing vowel sounds or words, and then I would kind of hear what I've sang. It's it's a process that lots of people use, and then I would kind of fit the words around what I've already sung, subconsciously. I like that kind of Dadaist sort of like automatic writing, and that appeals to me. I love that kind of. I think David Bowie did that a lot. I think they did where they would cut up the lyrics and rearrange them, because the last song I put out, Ghost, is the most narrative song that I've probably done, where it's a very obvious narrative.
Yeah.
But for me, I like guys like Chris Whitley, who are kind of like there's abstraction, and like look at Smokestack Lightning, the blues song.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Really, doesn't really make any. But you feel it on a different kind of level. It kind of makes sense, even though the words don't make sense. If that makes sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I like that. I'm not really fond of the Nashville storytelling kind of school of thought, where because that is a school of thought, and there's a very stylistically that's a thing. It doesn't really sort of interest me. I'd rather something more abstract myself. I like to consume that.
So blues rock is more about the musicality of it than the words and the lyrics, right?
Yeah, it becomes like a one thing. It becomes
about groove and feel and vibe and all of those things, right? Do you think that's?
Yeah. I would say, there are sort of like storytellers, as well. I'm sure within the Fire Cosmic there were sort of elements of things that have happened, life situations, that all ends up in there, because if you're writing subconsciously, or letting yourself improvise lyrically, that stuff will come out anyhow, or can come out, and then if fragments of it come out, then once you carry on writing, you can then twist that song to fit, to fit that.
Yeah. But tell me, does the type of guitar you use influence your songwriting process or your songs itself?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. If I pick up a Strat, I'm going to be doing something completely different to resonator, and the same with the Les Paul. I know there's Strat and Les Paul are different, but they really do. I get influenced by what I hear back as I'm playing something. So I start playing, I hear that come back to me, and that kind of informs the next step. So it's definitely I'm definitely sound orientated when I write.
Interesting. But tell me, just to wind up, what was your journey like towards becoming a professional musician? What were the early days like? What was that whole journey?
Well, I've played since I was a young teenager. I played guitar, and so I went through the school band thing. I played a couple of covers bands when I was really young, in my early teens. And it was kind of difficult because I live in a very rural area, away from the cities. It's just, I'm in the middle of nowhere, where I grew up, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any contacts whatsoever, so I knew no one in any industry. And it was hard, especially sort of like the early days of the internet, sort of back in the day, in my 20s. You go and do a gig, it would take you a long time to find the promoters.
Yeah.
And then you do a gig in the middle of nowhere, you had no idea what the scene was like. And you go and do a gig, and then come home, and then that will be it, and but then, as obviously with things like Facebook, that's been the sort of key, really, because that way you can find out who all the festivals are, who the festival organizers are, so if you're living in the middle of nowhere, it makes no difference, because you can find that information out. You can get to those places, and then starting my own band under my own name, it took about 3 years, maybe 3 years to get to know people on the festival circuit, and and to get into Europe. I went over to Czech and Spain and Russia, and that was a gradual thing where the more people I met, the more festivals I played, the more people you meet, and it just and that just kind of like it snowballs. And yeah, so it was a quite a long process, a very long process to get to know people, and to get to a position where we could get to play on the main stages at festivals, and
did you ever get to a point where you realized, or you decided that yes, music is for me and I'm going to make a career out of music? Or was it just a thing that happened?
Yeah, it was just something that happened gradually. I sort of worked jobs, through my 20s and 30s, so it just took a long time for that to happen, because certain other situations in my life wouldn't allow for that. I'd had kids, and so you got to sort of pin a job down for that reason. So it's life, especially if you come to it in different points of your life. I think if you're sort of like getting into your early 20s and you start down that path, that's probably easier, because you've known that. But then if you've had a job and you've worked, breaking out of that is quite tricky.
Yeah. So tell me, you have a tour coming up now. You're going to be on the road with the album.
Yeah, going to be out with Robert John on the Wreck in September. So that's a solo gig. So I'll be playing by myself with resonators, through amplifiers, obviously. So there'll be stripped down version of the album, Nice. And those guys are great. Those guys are amazing players. I can't wait to see them, myself to see them play, because they're just such a great combination of great songs, but with the jam kind of element.
Really cool. Yeah, you did some shows with Robert Plant as well, right? Back in the day.
Well, I did a show with him.
Oh, you did a show. What was that like?
Well, it was great. We'd that particular day we'd booked 3 festivals in different locations for the same day, which is crazy. I've never done that since. It just happened that we got one sort of like early in the day, one mid-afternoon, and one in the evening. And we knew the organizers of the last one, and I'm driving from the second one to the final one. And Deb Bonham, do you know Deborah Bonham, who's John Bonham's sister? Yeah, she was playing there. So she was going to be headlining. And then I got a phone call saying, Robert's here. I was like, oh, Jesus, right. So, and then I got there, and then Deb came up to me. She said, do you mind if we swap slots? Because something happened. And she said, and I said, okay, yeah. And I wasn't going to say no to her, And she said, oh, you can say that you were support band. And which is really funny. We sort of laughed at it. And so we had to go on after Deb and Robert had just finished when the levee break. So that was kind of hard because the audience has surged for that. Yeah. And I thought we're going to lose everyone. We're going to lose everyone. And they didn't go. We had to go out there like guns blazing because we just had to keep people there. So that was a hard gig. Not so much intimidating with Robert Plant, but it was just more kind of like we've got to keep the audience because this would be soul destroying to lose the crowd.
Yeah. But you were not intimidated that Robert Plant was there, and I mean,
no, when I was growing up, I was a huge Queen fan, and I liked Deep Purple, and I was kind of late to the party with Led Zeppelin. So they didn't have, like, if Brian May was there, then I would be sort of on the back foot. But Led Zeppelin, even though I appreciate their stuff, and I Led Zeppelin 3 is amazing. I love their stuff now. It didn't hold the same sort of gravitas. One of the guys from Deep Purple, maybe.
Yeah, amazing. Anyway, Troy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I really hope I can see you when I'm there the next year, and hopefully get to your shows and do some pictures and stuff. So.
Fantastic. No, thank you. That'd be brilliant and great to meet you.
Wonderful, Troy. All the best.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
That's it for this week's episode of Tales from the Road. Tales from the Road is brought to you by the Concert Photographer and Moving Pictures Media. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. If you like what you heard, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you for listening.